Hello, and welcome to this very first, very special edition of the Around the Ram Horn show, our new Valedictus show for Robinson. I'm your host, Matthew Lischblau, Valedictus sports editor, along with staff writers Nathaniel Robertson.
Hi.
Nate Walker.
Hello.
And special guest, Isaac Chambers. Today we're going to be debating a variety of major sports. Well, today, for this episode, we're going to stick to college football and the NFL respectively. So let's get into the rules. With this show, it's a point system, so whenever I hear an intelligent or compelling argument or point or statistic, just anything rather interesting among the panelists, I will award them a point. You'll hear this nice little Robinson Rams cowbell. I will tally up the points at the very end to see who advances to the next round. For our first cut, after our first cut, only 2 of these contestants will advance, and at the end we will crown a winner. So, let's get right into the debating. First, we're going to start off with college football. College football started rather recently. It's obviously always a hot topic. And our first topic within college football, we're going to have to discuss what is the most surprising player and team that each of you have watched throughout the season up to this point? If anybody wants to start.
Okay, I'll start. I think the most surprising player for me is quarterback Lamar Jackson for Louisville. He's leading the league with 18 total touchdowns. I think this kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of us. I certainly wasn't expecting him or his team, Louisville, to do very well at all. Louisville is undefeated. They just destroyed Florida State this past week, 63-20, I believe. And Florida State was just number 2, so it'll be very exciting to see Louisville play the rest of the season.
Well, I agree with what you said there. I'm not at all surprised that Louisville is any good, though, because, I mean, they produced Teddy Bridgewater, they produced just a bunch of good players in the recent times, they have a lot of good people in the NFL, and I'm not at all surprised that they're going to be in the contention for the playoffs. Now, I don't think anyone's surprised by this at all. I do think that the Heisman will go to Clemson.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson. Sorry. I think it's going to go to Deshaun Watson. That team is just too good. I think they're going to beat Louisville in the championship. And I don't think that Lamar Jackson's going to keep up what he's got going for him right now.
All right, interesting points. Nate, with your
So I also concur with the rest of the panelists. Lamar Jackson is doing very well, scoring 5 touchdowns against the number 2 team in the nation at the time, Florida State, and 4 of those were rushing touchdowns. He also had 1 passing touchdown. Louisville also has 2 more tough games, Clemson and Houston, both away games. So those will be tougher challenges since Florida State was a home game. So. And then Clemson started off slowly, but they're starting to pick it up, and I believe they just beat Georgia Tech for the first time at home, on the road since 2003. I could be mistaken, but I'm fairly positive about that. And so, but if Lamar Jackson keeps it up, I think he'll be the Heisman for sure.
Very interesting points. All right, so now let's get into the debate, go against each other's claims, and make some rebuttals, if anybody wants to start.
I just want to bring something else up. Another top candidate is Christian McCaffrey, running back for Stanford. He broke the record in all-purpose yards last year. He's leading the league once again in all-purpose yards. The problem with him is I don't think a lot of analysts and reporters who vote on the Heisman are on the East Coast. And generally the Stanford games are around the 10:30 time, and so many people don't stay up that late to watch them. And so there's kind of a West Coast bias, or East Coast bias, that goes against them.
Well, let's take Stanford and go back to last year during the Rose Bowl. Okay. That Stanford's offense completely fell apart to Iowa's defense. Their overall offense could do nothing. Christian McCaffrey stepped up and ran all over the Iowa team, scoring like 12 touchdowns in that game. It wasn't even fair. That one player beat Iowa, not the team.
Christian McCaffrey is still doing very well this year. He currently leads the nation in all-purpose yards, and he's averaging 235 yards per game. Although Stanford still has a pretty tough season ahead of them, with away games at Washington and Oregon and Notre Dame, which will all be challenges for them. And then Deshaun Watson, like Isaac said earlier, he said he might win the Heisman, but I have to disagree with that because, they're going to be playing Louisville. They're going to be at home in Death Valley, but I mean, the way Louisville's been playing, it might be very tough for them. And then they're also playing Florida State on the road, and Florida State currently has the longest winning home win streak in the nation, so that's also going to be a very tough game for Clemson. But if they win, Deshaun Watson will surely be up there in the Heisman candidate.
All right, I want to take it back to Stanford again because Christian McCaffrey is kind of my dude. He's kind of my guy. But because
Wait, let me just interject. All right, this is going to be the last kind of 45 seconds, so wrap up and make any final rebuttals.
okay, so Christian McCaffrey, right? Are you guys aware of the Elite 11? It's a bunch of high school quarterbacks that are top in the nation that go on to get scholarships and be like the number 1 overall 5-star quarterback candidate for the NCAA, right? Christian McCaffrey's little brother took 4th in that competition in the Elite 11 to be the number 1 quarterback in the nation. His father played in the NFL.
His brother is also he's a free agent right now, but
His brother's a free agent in the NFL. His grandfather was an Olympic runner. His mother was a star soccer player in Stanford. His entire genetics runs on athletic skill.
I think that's a very interesting point.
I think that while genetics may have a play in that, I don't think that's really relevant to this game that has been this year.
Okay.
I think that it'll be a battle between either them two, Christian McCaffrey, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson. I think the biggest game of this season will be Clemson against Louisville because that will make or break Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson.
Very interesting points brought up all around in terms of college. We're going to stick to college right now. I want you guys to give me a couple of your most surprising and most disappointing teams of the season thus far. We'll begin with whoever wants to start.
I'll start. Let's see this, all right? Iowa's ranked number 13. The Hawkeyes had a great season against the Iowa State, great game against Iowa State. They had a great game against Miami, Ohio. And they came out ranked number 13, coming in against an F1 AA team, right? NDSU.
But a very, very strong double A team.
They have 5 straight championships in the league, and they produced Carson Wentz and all this. So that's I'm an Iowa fan, right? So I use that as my excuse. But we just fell apart. Iowa fell apart. They couldn't do anything against NDSU. NDSU, I think, should be qualified to be a D1 team.
I think that the most disappointing team for me is they got off to a great start, Texas. They came out week 1 on Sunday night. They beat Notre Dame in double overtime. One of the most exciting games I've seen so far this year. I definitely think that everyone was kind of hopping on their bandwagon a little bit. They were just really excited to see this team because Texas hasn't been good for 5, 6 years since they lost Alabama in the championship with Colt McCoy. I think that they definitely, and last week they lost to Cal, and it was just a sloppy penalty-ridden game, and they definitely should have won. So that's really disappointing for me.
So I also have some disappointing teams as well, like Florida State's loss to Louisville. I mean, going into the game, I was expecting it to be rather close. Maybe Florida State coming on top. That clearly was not the outcome.
Yeah.
Florida State was
Say that again.
metaphorically annihilated. And it was the worst loss in school history for Florida State, and it was also the first time a school had ever scored more than 60 points against Florida State. And then also another disappointing team I would say is Ole Miss. In both of their big games so far against Florida State and Alabama, they were ahead by quite a significant margin, but then they ended up blowing it, and both Florida State and Alabama came back and ended up winning those games. And then Oklahoma they started off in the top 10 and lost to Houston, which was a little surprising. And then they played Ohio State, which losing to them wasn't as surprising, but they're definitely out of it now.
All right. That was, again, a very interesting debate. We had a lot of advanced discussion there. And with our final around minute or so remaining. I wanna just briefly detail what are you guys' college football player playoff championship predictions. I just want like 1 or 2 sentences each. No real rebuttal. Go.
Okay, so my 4 teams are Alabama, Ohio State, Louisville, and Stanford. If Stanford can win after this, very critical. I think that the championship game will be between Louisville and Alabama, and I think that will be a very, very interesting game. I think that Louisville will come on top.
My college football prediction is a little bit different. I'm going to say it's going to be Alabama, Michigan, Louisville, and Stanford. I think that Alabama's going to get upset by Michigan, and then Louisville's going to come in very strong against Stanford. McCaffrey's going to do the best he can, but they're not going to be able to pull it off. And I think that in the end, Michigan's going to come out on top over Louisville because Michigan just have a bigger history of being a better football team, and they just have probably one of the best coaches in the NCAA.
Okay, and finally, Nate.
So, see, the thing about college football is that anything can happen and there will be upsets. So just when you think something's going to happen, it can totally turn around. But so right now, Alabama, it looks like they're in the clear. Their last remaining tough games would be at Tennessee and then Auburn, since it's a rivalry game and anything can happen in rivalry games, such as a couple years ago when the kick six happened. And then Ohio State might have a tough time at Wisconsin, at Michigan State. If they win, they're going to I would say they would make it in 2. Louisville, if they keep playing the way that they've been playing so far this year, then they're definitely going to get in. They might even jump Ohio State. And then, so Michigan, if they lose to Ohio State, will be out, which is why Michigan and Ohio State will be such a big game. It's a rivalry game. Both teams are in the top 4. Huge playoff implications. And then I think Stanford, assuming they beat Washington, will make it. And then I think in the end, Louisville will come out on top as national champions.
All right. That was very great discussion. I'd like to applaud all of you today for participating. It was actually very good, very advanced level of thinking there. But unfortunately, we do have to eliminate one of the contestants. And I apologize, Isaac, you fought very hard. All of you fought very hard. But in the end, yeah, we did have to award Nate Walker and Nathaniel Robertson. Isaac, again, you did put up a great battle, but in the end it was between you and Nathaniel Robertson, and he just barely edged you and prevailed in that matchup. So, with that being said, here are the total scores. We have in the lead Nate Walker with 10 points, followed by Nathaniel Robertson with 7 points, and Isaac, who was eliminated in this first cut, with 5 points. Now, stay tuned to our viewers for the final section, the second cut of our program. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our Around the Ramhorn show covering sports. It's the ultimate face-off right here, the 2 that have advanced from round 1 of college football. Nathaniel Robertson, staff writer, and Nate Walker, another staff writer. In this section, we will be discussing NFL football in particular. Now, let me just detail the first topic that we're going to go into. First of all, we're going to try to cut off this debate at around 10 minutes, if we can get it around there. But for NFL, we're going to discuss Week 2 takeaways, and since as of filming this recording, the New England Houston game has just occurred, we can also embed that into the discussion. So if anybody wants to start with key takeaways.
I think I'm going to start with the New England Houston game last night. That game was very, very sloppy for the Houston Texans. Brock Osweiler throwing an interception, no touchdowns obviously. They were completely shut out, literally shut out by the New England Patriots. In the first half, they did not have a snap in New England territory. The furthest they got was the New England 50-yard line. Also, the Patriots somehow still were able to win with rookie third-string quarterback Jacoby Brissett, no previous NFL experience, well, a few snaps in Week 2. Obviously, this has something more to do with the system that Bill Belichick has implemented, and not with the quarterback skill.
All right, and
also going off of the New England Houston game, New England looked really good. They got the shutout against Houston, against Houston, 27-0, with their third-string quarterback. Bill Belichick is a great quarterback coach. He's 6-0 with quarterbacks in their first career start in NFL games. And then so right now the Patriots are looking really good if they keep this up. I mean, they have a lot ahead of them. Then the Broncos, they also look good. I wasn't sure how they would be without Peyton Manning, but
their offense is still kind of a little sluggish. At least the quarterback play. They're trying to get a little
Broncos.
mesh. Yeah, Broncos. Yeah, they're trying to get a little mesh, but their defense, especially in Week 2 against the Colts, looked spectacular. Yeah.
All right. That's it for key takeaways. Does anybody want to add key takeaways from week 2 and up to this point? No.
The Raiders. Their defense, again, many people thought that their defense would be improved from last year. Their offense, in terms of total yardage, is number 1 in the NFL with, I think, 913 yards. And the Raiders' defense is 32nd in the NFL. They've allowed over 500 yards in consecutive games and have over 1,000 yards total allowed in their first 2 games.
So
Very lopsided. Yes.
So very lopsided. It's a good point to bring up. Okay, so moving on further in the NFL, what are your way too early MVP predictions? Not necessarily based on how you think they will play, but, well, actually based on how you think they will play and how they have played up until this point. So MVP predictions, if anybody. Nathaniel, do you want to start?
Okay, so my MVP prediction is actually Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver for the Cardinals.
Oh, a wide receiver has never won an MVP.
This might sound interesting. He has completely destroyed quarterbacks on teams he's played against. They've played against the Steelers and the Buccaneers. They they both have great defenses. Or sorry, the Patriots.
The Patriots.
Yeah, the Patriots. Patriots and Buccaneers both have great defenses. And Larry Fitzgerald right now has 3 touchdowns. And he's one of the leaders in total yards for a receiver. And I think that if he can keep up steady production like this, that he could win the league.
Okay, and on to you, Nate.
So I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks in it this year, as there always is, I'm sure. Aaron Rodgers right now is at the number 1 spot. I think that if he keeps playing well, like he usually does.
I don't know if we saw how he performed last week. He performed very well.
Right, but I must say to that, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that was a road game against the Vikings. The Vikings did win their division last year, so the Vikings is always going to be a tough game for the Packers, but I mean, one game very early on in the season is not going to dictate the rest of the Packers season. And then Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, they did lose to the Rams, but I'm sure they're going to rebound from that. The Seahawks have a very good team this year, and I'm sure they're going to be very hard to beat. And plus, also that was on the road, and the Seahawks are very good at home.
Okay, so that was way too early MVP predictions. Now we'll move on to another way too early prediction, and that is Super Bowl. I know it's only week 3, but there's no getting around it. Super Bowl predictions right here, right now. One definitive answer. Who's yours?
Okay, I'm going with the same pick that I've had since the preseason, and that is Patriots against the Cardinals. Obviously, the Patriots have been steamrolling through their opponents without starting quarterback Tom Brady and starting tight end Rob Gronkowski, the best tight end in the NFL and the best quarterback in the NFL. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they narrowly lost to the Patriots because of a botched snap. That was sad, but I think that they can. I think that they can blaze through the NFC, and hopefully they can beat the Panthers, which they struggled with last year.
Okay, we only have a little bit of time left remaining on this podcast, but Nate, I really quickly want to get your Super Bowl predictions before we
I also agree with Nathaniel. I also think the Patriots and the Cardinals will be in the Super Bowl. The Patriots have clearly shown that they don't need Tom Brady to win football games. They beat the Cardinals on the road with their second-string quarterback. They shut out the Texans with their third-string quarterback. The Cardinals completely dominated the Buccaneers. They narrowly lost to the Patriots. but I think the Cardinals are going to get a lot better throughout the season, and the Super Bowl is going. And if this is the Super Bowl game, it's going to be a very interesting matchup.
Okay. Really very quickly, just want like 2 sentences, no rebuttal, of one fantasy sleeper pick that you think has really performed incredibly well this season, and one that has been disappointing. We'll start with you, Nate.
All right, so first, I'll start with the disappointing. I'm going to say Adrian Peterson. He's only gotten about, I think, 6 points total, and then with his injury, he's now going to be out for quite some time. So that was very disappointing, especially since he was on my fantasy team. So.
And your biggest sleeper pick, who you think has really performed well, even though not being a huge name?
I mean, I think maybe Stephon Diggs has had some big games. He is. Sam Bradford has thrown to him a lot, and is kind of relying on him. I believe they're playing the Panthers this week, and so that's gonna. Sam Bradford is definitely going to rely on him. Stephon Diggs is going to need to step it up, but I think right now he's definitely doing a lot better, and he was kind of, I would say he would be a sleeper at the beginning of the season.
Okay, I'll start with my surprise, which is starting running back Isaiah Crowell from the Browns. He through 2 games this year, he has 195 yards, 2 touchdowns, and is averaging 6.5 yards per carry, which I think is very, very impressive. And then also my disappointment is Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley, who was one of the most hyped rookies last year after missing 4 games. He won Rookie of the Year and had a stellar performance. Many people picked him very, very early in the first round of the fantasy football draft. And so far he has 98 yards, no touchdowns, and only 2.7 yards per carry, which is very, very mediocre.
Wow. Okay, well that concludes the second cut, and with your final sentence, I will have to say that unfortunately, for one of the Nathaniels, the other Nathaniel is going to win, and the Nathaniel that's going home is Nate Walker. I'm sorry. It was a narrow defeat. You lost 15 to Nate's 16. His last point was just about fantasy. It was just very impressive, very well researched. You're both very well researched. Obviously, a 1-point margin of victory. Very, very tight matchup between the two. Thank you to our viewers for joining us on this very special first Around the Ram Horn podcast. I hope you will tune into later episodes. Be sure to check us out and be sure to get involved with Robinson Community, and be sure to look for us in Valedictus. Thank you. And also thanks to our guests, Nathaniel Robertson, Nate Walker, Isaac Chambers, and behind the camera is Aiden O'Meara, entertainment editor. Bye.
Bye.